Welcome to this edition of Meet America. I'm Annie Griffin, your host, and I'm focusing very much on the criminal element within our government. It is my opinion that if the American people don't start pushing back our government, which has become so criminal in its actions, stealing our tax dollars, rounding up wild horses, killing off our wildlife, lying to the American people on every level, and not prosecuting government officials who are breaking the law, that creates such rot in the heart of our government that we become a nation of weaklings, of people that won't speak up, because they have become so powerful, just as Thomas Jefferson predicted long, long time ago when they wrote the Constitution, that Americans will not be able to fight back. They're taking your guns away, slowly but surely. In my opinion, they're actually causing terrorism. I really believe that. And I think we've got to take a really good look at what we're becoming and what we're allowing our government to become. So I'm going to give you examples of that in this show. The first example is the criminal taking of our wild horses. Our wild horses belong to the American people. And there's a law called the Wild Free Roaming Horse and Burro Act of 1971, which states that horses found on their herd areas will have devoted principal presence. That means that they will get primary choice of the land that they are on, and that land is to be protected for them, and that other species of wildlife and livestock have second choice. Well, the BLM, which is basically governed by the cattle industry, and the cattle industry, of course, is supported by every person that eats a burger or a steak. They lobby in Washington, and they've weakened the law, and they're saying the wild horses are overpopulated, they're destroying the environment, and they need to be removed with our tax dollars. And so this has been going on for several years, and from the 2 million that we started out with long before humans came to this continent, have now diminished into almost an extinct species. And the BLM is holding them in areas where they're saying they're on ranches, and that the ranchers don't want us on their land looking to make sure the horses are safe and being fed and not going to slaughter. But they're using our tax dollars to get hay to feed these horses. So in that event, they should allow representatives of the public and the media to come on yearly to these ranches and verify that these horses are indeed there. Well, what has happened is now a scandal has been uncovered by an article in ProPublica, and the author of that article is a hero in my estimation. I'm going to read that article to you, and then you'll understand a little bit about the scandal that's going on. This is the article called All the Missing Horses, What Happened to the Wild Horses Tom Davis Bought from the Government in 2012. The main buyer from the federal program designed to protect wild horses is a Colorado man who advocates slaughter. He's bought more than 1,700 horses since 2009, but won't say where they are. Now, I'd like to let you know here that if you and I want to adopt a horse from the BLM comes out to your property and checks to make sure that the horse you're adopting has a good home. And yet, they allowed 1,700 horses They actually shipped 1,700 horses at our cost, which is totally illegal, of $140,000. They shipped to Tom Davis and sold them to him at $10 a head. Now, you and I have to pay $100 or more a head, and we can only get 2 or 3 horses at the most. But a known horse killer, they sold these horses to. So these people in BLM they're criminals, they went against the law, and they need criminal action. But the U.S. Attorney of Colorado refuses to prosecute Tom Davis or these BLM employees. And that's the corruption of our government. It is beholden to no one, and it is like a wild, runaway, crazy machine, and they are building up their military while they are taking away our ability to defend ourselves or our country. And that's why I bring this program to you, because the horses are sacred. And the horses are a symbol of not only our freedom, but what our government is becoming. It is a criminally run government by criminally run, in my opinion, U.S. attorneys who are not doing their job. They need to be fired. Anyone who is not doing their job, for whatever reason, needs to be fired. So now Sam Farr, our congressman here in Monterey, who's going to be retiring soon, has written a letter, and I'm going to read that to you, to the Attorney General, stating the need for the money to be returned that the BLM used to send these horses to this known horse slaughter killer buyer, and that these people, including the BLM, needs to be prosecuted. And so now it's gone to the U.S. Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, and we are waiting for a response. My opinion is that she is not going to prosecute because they don't prosecute their own people. The government doesn't prosecute itself. It only prosecutes you and I. So sooner or later, if Americans don't stand up, and I'm talking about calling on the phone, demonstrating, doing whatever you can, and I know you're overwhelmed, we all are, but that's exactly why they're getting away with what they're getting away with. And it's going to come to the point where you're going to have to do something, or we're going to be going to the camps. Because that, in my opinion, Hitler is alive and well in this country in a spiritual sense, and it all becomes possible because the American people didn't take the first step of doing something. And you don't have to do a lot, but everyone has to do something in order to keep our country free. So thanks for watching, and I'm going to read you that letter from Sam Farr now. And I want to thank Sam Farr publicly for doing so much for the wild horses, trying to stop horse slaughter, trying to protect our food inspection program by making sure that the advocates for horse slaughter, such as Mr. Adderholt in the Appropriations Committee, he's the chairman, and Senator Blunt, these kind of people want to spend your tax dollars bringing back horse slaughter, saying that, oh, we'll do a better job. No, they didn't do a better job before, and they're not going to do a better job now. It's all cruel and horrible. And we do not eat our animals, our domestic, we don't eat our companion animals, and that's what our horses are. And they brought us through history on their backs. They fought in our wars. We owe more to them than dogs, cats, any other animal for what they have done for us. And it's a very spiritual journey that we're on with the horse to save our country and to save ourselves from these criminals that have taken over our government and refuse to do anything to prosecute the criminals that are running this whole operation. So let's move on now. I'm going to read this letter. It's from Sam Farr to Mrs. Lynch, the U.S. Attorney General, Ms. Caldwell, and Mr. Cruden. Mr. Cruden is the Assistant Attorney General for the Environment and Natural Resources. Leslie Caldwell is the Assistant Attorney General, Criminal Division. And it starts out, this was written December 7th, 2015. I'm not going to read all of it to you, but just enough for you to get the gist of it. The Office of Inspector General, OIG, for the United States Department of Interior recently published a troubling report, the OIG report, that details the Bureau of Land Management's failure to follow current law and policy through its administration of the Wild Horses and Burro program. As the OIG report outlines, between 2008 and 2012, the BLM failed to prevent Colorado-based livestock hauler Tom Davis from acquiring 1,794 wild horses, which Davis subsequently sold to kill buyers. These kill buyers sent the horses to Mexico, where they were slaughtered for human consumption. Furthermore, BLM spent approximately $140,000 in taxpayers' funds in transporting those horses to Mr. Davis. Now, under the Wild Free Roaming Horse and Burro Act of 1971, that is totally illegal. BLM is not allowed to spend any of the taxpayers' money on sending horses to slaughter, period, the end. They have to get congressional approval to do that. And so there they broke the law right there. Although the OIG investigation was referred to the U.S. Attorney General's office in the District of Colorado and the state of Colorado, Conjos County District Attorney's Office, both offices declined civil or criminal prosecution. So that's my points that I'm trying to get to you. They declined. The Justice Department, the department that we depend on for justice, declined to prosecute the BLM or Tom Davis, which means that the slaughtering of our wild horses is going to continue, and the illegal actions is going to continue, because there's no accountability, because our government has become the criminal itself. And if you don't do something about it, if we don't start demanding action, we are definitely next in line. And I'm going to prove that to you as well. So let's, I'm going to give you Loretta Lynch's number up there. And I want you to call and say that she needs to bring justice to the American people, and for those poor horses that were sent to slaughter, foals and mares and stallions, and it just breaks my heart what's happening not only to the wild horses but to our country, and the horses are the messengers. You see, in Indian prophecy, the horses are the messengers. And so they're telling us by the actions that the BLM is doing how very criminal our government has become, and how it lies to you, and how it doesn't prosecute the people that are disobeying the law. But they'll prosecute you and I. Yes, they will, and they'll throw you in jail. They'll throw the homeless in jail for sleeping in a car. But they won't throw these people in jail that are abusing your tax dollars and causing incredible cruelty to our wild horses. So we need to ask the Attorney General not only to prosecute the employees in BLM that sold these horses to Tom Davis, but Tom Davis himself. And we also need to mandate that no more money is going towards roundups. Period, the end. And that all the horses in holding areas on these ranches that they won't allow us to see, they have to now open up. We have to do a count of all the wild horses that are in holding, and we have to start returning these horses to the lands that was designated to them, and also the 22 million acres of the 52 million acres that was originally given to the wild horses is also returned. BLM took away 22 million acres of the herd areas belonging to the horses without any congressional approval, saying that the horses were overpopulated and that they needed to take this land away. It doesn't make sense. It's time, folks, that we took back America and we take back our wildlife and we don't allow your diet of beef. That's what's happening. Every time you're eating a burger, mindlessly eating a burger or a steak or whatever constitutes a cow, you are helping that industry become more and more powerful, which then in turn lobbies these senators and congresspeople that really don't know what's going on anyway. You know, they're just listening to what they've been told. And then the cattle ranchers take over. And that's why Bundy is able to get away with confronting the BLM with guns, because the beef lobby is so powerful. But if the horse advocates went out there with guns, we'd be shot down. So is this what you want America to become? Is this what you want America to be? Because that's what's happening. And I'm putting myself on the line. I'm out here telling you this. I'm calling the government what it is. I'll probably get shot, you know. But it doesn't matter, because you're going to get shot anyway. You're going to get put away. You're not going to be able to do anything. All you're going to be able to do is do your little work and come home and hope that no one notices you. So call Loretta Lynch and insist that she do her job. That's very, very important. I'm going to read to you some more of what's going on here. So, although the OIG investigation was referred to, we went through that. The OIG also referred evidence to the U.S. Attorney's Office of the District of New Mexico. This evidence is of a U.S. Department of Agriculture. I've been showing you all along how the USDA is also very negligent about inspecting our food, firing inspectors who stand up and say the animals aren't being treated right. There's mad cow going through the processing line, all these things. And I don't even think any of you call or care. You know, you just keep eating your burgers. And there's karma to that, because now we've got Alzheimer's. And yes, Alzheimer's is linked with mad cow. It's a prion disease. Okay, so this evidence is of the U.S. Department of Agriculture certified veterinarian who admitted that he never inspected any of the horses as required by law. So the inspectors aren't inspecting these horses. Before signing international health certificates, which are required before horses can be exported. Do you see how criminal everything is? Are you just going to sit there and not pick up the phone? Where is the heart and guts of the American people? Okay, so the U.S. Attorney General's Office for the District of New Mexico also declined prosecution, and they also declined to prosecute that veterinarian that didn't inspect those horses that went overseas. Our beautiful wild horses that should be on the land, how beautiful they are when they're running across the land, and how much they contribute to the environment of the land, which BLM is lying about, because BLM has been taken over by the cattle industry. So the OIG stated it would also refer this evidence to the USDA Office of Inspector General for any action deemed appropriate. Despite the admitted illegal activity that occurred, federal prosecutors are failing to take action. Okay, this is coming from Sam Farr, Congressman Sam Farr himself, this letter. And these people are getting away with murdering our horses, murdering you through improper inspection practices, using your tax dollars, and you're just going to let them get away with that? Shame on you, America. You're getting what you are not fighting for. All right, so now we're going to go to the next page. Both BLM's application to purchase wild horses and burros and sample bill of sale for wild horses and burros require a purchaser to agree to certain terms in writing, including the humane care of any purchased animals and not to sell or transfer ownership to any person or organization that intends to resell, trade, or give away the horses for processing in commercial products. Consequently, none of the horses sold to Mr. Davis could have been legally resold for slaughter. In addition, the OIG report noted that Mr. Davis knew where the horses would be taken because there was only one place to go, to the kill plant. So Tom Davis actually admitted that he sent these horses to slaughter. And yet the U.S. Attorney General's office in Colorado refuses to prosecute him? Oh my God, you guys, you've got to start doing something. You cannot let this government become so criminally intentional that it ignores its own criminal employees getting away with what it's getting away with. And I'd like to also say the judges are becoming so blatantly criminal that when you get a case to court that shows and proves beyond a shadow of a doubt what you're saying is true, and they just find some little thing and they circumvent the whole point. So there's only going to be one way to take back America, folks, and that is with violence at the way it's going. You know, that's going to be the only way, and I don't know how that's going to happen. But Ferguson is a good example of that. Those people got so fed up with the police that they didn't care about their lives anymore. They just decided they were going to go and demonstrate in whatever it took. So maybe that's what has to happen. But I hope not. I hope that you're going to get so many calls and email and Facebook and everything you can, Loretta Lynch's office, that she cannot refuse this issue. So Davis's actions directly violated federal law and contradicted congressional mandates that prohibit wild horses to be sent to slaughter. And I'm going to skip on through this. In light of this information, we urge your offices to take action and initiate criminal and or civil investigations, including but not necessarily limited to a broad-scale investigation of all involved in this scheme that saw over 1,700 wild horses protected under U.S. law being sent to slaughter in Mexico. In particular, we encourage you to consider bringing a False Claims Act against Mr. Davis and considering legal action against other involved parties, including the BLM itself, as appropriate. We respectfully request a written plan of action, including a timeline for the investigation. Should you elect not to take action, we would request a written explanation for your decision. Thank you for your attention in this urgent matter. This is from Sam Farr and Michelle Lujan Grisham, member of Congress, two very, very good members of Congress representing us, the taxpayers. So I'll keep you, but right now we're going to go to the Salt River horses. This is just another example of where your tax dollars are going, folks, and the illegal activities that the BLM is continuing, thumbing their noses at us.
Breaking news off the top here at 5.
Salt River Wild Horse Management Group is rallying support to stop the roundup and possible slaughter of those horses.
The federal government is postponing the roundup after a big public outcry and she's falling right now. Everyone knows what's going on.
from all over the world visit Tonto National Forest here in Arizona to see some beautiful wild horses, but that is about to change.
This is a colossal mistake that the Forest Service is making.
And although no one has ever been hurt, forest officials feel they must go.
It just boils down to a safety concern for the Forest Service.
Well, forest officials are still working out how exactly they're going to remove the horses, but they say they will likely use riders and helicopters.
Right on the U.S. side of Juarez. Right before you're just taking off now to Juarez, Mexico. This is going to be these horses' last ride. I just talked to the Texas Department of Agriculture, and these horses are not going to Juarez. They're going to the underground market in Mexico City.
Just on top of the lines of horses right now.
Guys are bringing out horse legs now. That's the back of a horse leg. This is the van that has about 4 horses in it.
So you see, taking away these beautiful... So you see, taking away these beautiful horses that are only enhancing our country, and all these vast empty lands where horses could be, and antelope and buffalo, all you see is cattle. That's why I urge you, folks, call your Congress members, tell them what you've seen, and tell them you don't want your tax dollars going towards this kind of atrocity. So I'm going to bring you some more illegal activities that are going on. We're going to hear now from Cindy McDonald, who's done extensive research into the BLM mismanagement of our wild horses. Thank you for watching.
My name's Cindy McDonald, and I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I am the publisher of American Herds blog.
Okay, and why don't you tell us, Cindy, what you want to tell the public about what's going on with our horses?
Well, I got into this about 4.5 years ago due to a newspaper article that announced that they were going to take about 1,000 wild horses out of our area. I had grown up in this area my whole life and had been used to bands and herds of horses periodically scattering across the valley, and I found that number extremely hard to believe that there was actually really 1,000 horses here to take. So at that time, the BLM lady in charge of the proposal basically asked the public to become involved, but that they didn't want to hear anything about emotional arguments, that they were looking for scientific data that could help them in the management of wild horses and burros and multiple use. And so at that time, I didn't even know who BLM was. I didn't know what multiple use meant. I had no idea that wild horses and burros were even managed. And so that began my journey, and I began studying every aspect of the Bureau of Land Management and all the different things that they manage, which includes livestock, oil and gas, sometimes timber, as well as horses and burros. And I think that after researching like all these different things, wildlife and all the things that we get out of the land, what I would like America to know is that there's something seriously wrong with BLM's numbers, with BLM's books, with BLM's records. And I have been trying for the last 2 to 3 years to get some sort of congressional and media attention, somebody to start looking through their books. And I'm asking people to basically ask their congressman, we want an investigation because something's wrong with their numbers. Year after year, no matter how many horses and burros they take off the land, they keep coming back and saying the same amount is there or more. And the numbers just do not jive. So I've developed some systems. I have studied their statistics rigorously. And I've talked to many BLM personnel, a lot of different field offices, from the range cons all the way up to the National Program Office. And I've learned a lot about how BLM does things, and that as near as, from everything that they've taught me and all of their records, it seems to me that there has to be much less wild horses and burros on public lands than they keep reporting. And nobody seems to be really investigating or looking into this, but the numbers themselves are so scary that I'm very concerned about what is really left on the range, what's really free roaming. So that, I think that's the most important thing, is that this program, the BLM, which is part of the Department of the Interior, it's actually a sub-branch. The Department of the Interior is the agency that was responsible for the Deepwater Horizon disaster this last spring. And they have a hold on public lands and public resources. And through the years, there have been multiple documentations from the Government Accountability Office, the Office of Inspector General, and a wide variety of journalistic, various investigative reports that basically say the DOI is considered one of the most corrupt government agencies in our nation. And because the Wild Horse and Burro program is relatively small, it seems to be just escaping, floating underneath the real critical eye. But considering their history and whether you're talking minerals and management or oil and gas, they've got a very long history of things that are not right, and things are not right with the Wild Horse and Burro program. And before a single more Mustang or burro is pulled off public lands, there needs to be an investigation because something's wrong. That was quite the rant.
Well, quite right, because the American people are very hurt by what's going on. And what they're doing, as I keep repeating to everyone, what they're doing to the horses is a direct insult and thumb their noses at we, the American people. They're taking our tax dollars, our hard-earned money, and they're robbing us of a resource that means a lot to us and is a symbol of our freedom and is something that we love. We love Trigger. We were brought up with Hi-Ho Silver. We were brought up with Roy Rogers and Trigger, and we were brought up with, wonderful, beautiful Black Beauty and racehorses, and then we discover to our horror that they're going to slaughter so many of these gallant, beautiful, mythical creatures that we love so much and are part of our heritage and our journey through history. And so I thank you so much. I would like to ask you about, I read your blog and your letter to Bob Abbey, and I was deeply moved by your passion and your research and the guts that you had to address this issue. And I am very disturbed, especially after interviewing Nick, who was 6 years at a BLM feedlot, feeding these horses and watching them disappear on trucks at 5 in the morning with no one to follow these trucks. And where are they going? And he said there's no way to trace unless the public starts getting involved and following these trucks to destinations and taking note and documenting where they're going. And I truly believe that because the BLM is being so secretive about this, that they are going to slaughter, even though the BLM denies it. And maybe Bob Abbey's in his heart, he doesn't want these horses to go to slaughter. There are higher ups that want these horses to go to slaughter. So what have you found in your research?
Well, okay, the slaughter issue is a very complex issue because it's difficult to prove. Exactly, because BLM has been so secretive about so many things, when you were talking about horses being a symbol of freedom, that's covering a broad spectrum of stuff, and I'll try to get back to the slaughter thing in just a second, but I wanted to discuss when there's this thing called, when BLM does a proposal, we as Americans have this honor that has been bestowed upon us, and this honor is the right to participate in government processes, in the management of our nation's resources, and BLM and other government, BLM is required to involve the public in this. When you were talking about how they're disrespecting the public, I have become involved in every possible level of that public process. And as a result, I've ended up learning to investigate all kinds of laws and case laws and BLM regulations and BLM policy and various things like that. And there is no words to express how flagrantly they are abusing the laws, not just like, sending Mustangs off into the night. We're talking about basic American rights on the most basic level that they are being incredibly arrogant about, right? They literally acting like that we serve them and that public lands and public resources are for the elite. Okay, so but now with respect to the last blog story and the amount of research and stuff, some of the stuff that contained was research and information that was garnered from many different horse and burro advocates, a lot of hard work, like the capture status records that American Horse Defense Fund was finally able to get from BLM. They had actually asked for the capture status, the records of every horse and burro that is in long-term holding. And these are the horses that BLM is claiming is, causing the escalating cost. BLM was not able and unwilling to provide that information. They only were able to provide information on horses and burros that had been removed, gathered is what they like to call it, removed within the last year. So there was this vast thing of records that they wouldn't or couldn't account for.
Of horses that are supposed to be in holding and aren't?
Supposed to be in holding. Well, we don't know where they are, but they will not provide any records on them. Okay, but in that short period of time, it was actually a little over a 9-month period that we were able to get records for. We were able to cross-reference what they claimed were in holding with different BLM reports about what they said they removed and what actually ended up in the capture pens. And just in a little bit of the areas that we were able to cross-reference, we already started finding discrepancies, but 20, 30, 40 horses gone. Or in some cases, BLM reported they never removed them, but they showed up in the pens. It's like, there's definitely some funny numbers in some of the things that we've been able to crowbar out of BLM. Another one that came up with that is that an advocate, and again, that post was actually the work of a lot of different people. Another advocate had spotted a BLM truck and managed to get, it was a horse hauling truck that had a big BLM logo on the side. It was actually 2 of them, and they had 2 consecutive license plates, and so they were actually able to get photos of the license plate. So another advocate put in a Freedom of Information Act request, and it came back that they had no records of the trucks at all. And then, but they were able to provide, they said, well, we can provide information that the horse trailers came from another BLM place, but you're going to have to resubmit your request. And so we did a little investigation, and we found out that those horse trailers were brand new in 2008, which is the same year that BLM said, we don't have enough money to continue to feed and support all these horses and burros. And so now we're considering euthanizing tens of thousands of these animals. So that the same year that they don't have the money to feed them, we're finding brand new horse trailers and trucks that they say they have no records of purchasing. So like that blog story is actually a compilation of a lot of different people. And one of the things that I try to do on American Herds is I try to give people an outlet that may not be in a position to be so public or so vocal about it for whatever their particular reasons are. They may not want, to be associated with, but there's a lot of people that are working on this issue. Now, to kind of get back to your question about horses going to slaughter, we don't have any proof. But one of the reasons we don't have any proof is because BLM will not let any member of the public near anything. That we've asked for cameras on helicopters that conduct gathers. We've asked for cameras on the trucks. We've asked, we can't get into long-term holding. We get very limited access to short-term holding. They basically manage this program like it's a classified military operation instead of, something as simple as these are natural resources. These are just horses and burros.
We noticed that today.
Yes. So it's very disconcerting, and it's also, you don't realize how much they seem to be treating the public like the enemy. Since 2008, they started another Freedom of Information Act request that was done after BLM made this announcement that they were going to euthanize all these, they were considering euthanizing all these animals. They put together a team, and they had these conference calls, and they were trying to discuss various options, and if we had to euthanize horses, what we would do it. And we found some very, very revealing information in that stuff. In fact, at the top, or the cover page, it said for internal use only, not for public release. Okay, but we did get them through the Freedom of Information Act request, and some of the things were, one of the things we noticed is they began referring to anybody who was interested in wild horse and burros and the program that was not 100% supportive of their gather and removal techniques as eco-terrorists. There was one of the lines in there that they were discussing that if they had to do mass euthanasia on horses and burros, that they would have to shield and hide to secret locations from the public, from Congress, and from the media. Okay, so there was a lot of other really heavy things. In fact, there was that was in there. One of them was,
and that's what they're doing now. They're hiding and shielding these horses, saying to the public that we're not going to euthanize them, but they're disappearing, public.
Well, we certainly can't get very much access to them, that's for sure. That's for sure. And one of the other things that I wanted to mention that makes this highly suspicious is this has kind of been forgotten, but starting in 1992, a grand jury investigation was launched in Texas, and it was called the Del Rio investigation. And it was actually initiated by BLM's own law enforcement officers who had stumbled onto what they believed was possibly a Mustang to slaughter ring. And there was 4 years that this grand jury investigation was going on. The law enforcement officer, according to the historical records, gathered over 3,000 pieces of evidence of BLM employees involved in selling Mustangs to slaughter. What ended up happening was the straw that finally broke the camel's back on this is that the grand jury put in a subpoena to count the number of horses in one of their holding facilities, and they were basically denied. Okay, a subpoena from a grand jury was denied, and the federal government basically went and through a variety of legal tactics and intimidation tactics, they went after the BLM law enforcement officers that had collected this information. Okay, they dismantled, and not one piece of that evidence was ever heard. And I still find this stunning. One of the most amazing things about it is the DOI's lawyer, one of the DOI's lawyer, actually argued the case that the practice of selling Mustangs to slaughter by BLM personnel was so common, it would be unfair to prosecute one or two individuals. Okay, so there was this huge thing with that. Then, and the FBI got involved, Department of Justice got involved, Office of Inspector General got involved, and a big whitewash happened. And nothing, the whole thing was dismantled. The case was,
When was this?
The investigation ran from 1992 to 1996 when it was disbanded, okay? Up until that point in time, the BLM was required to submit to Congress every 2 years a report on the Wild Horse and Burro program. After this, in 1996, the BLM has never again submitted a report to Congress, and Congress has not asked for one. Okay, so there's actually this history of it, and after all this dirt was starting to surface, this can of worms was starting to open, they slammed it shut, and nobody has looked at it since. And so instead of it becoming, coming to light, so there's a lot of history, at least, that leads one to believe, especially when you use that in conjunction with the way that they keep such an iron curtain on this program, that it's very possible horses and burros are disappearing into the night.
Well, I want to thank you, Cindy. This is incredible news. Not surprising, the way of the deep, rotten corruption of our government. And unless the people start to stand up and take back in every way, speak out, we're going to the ovens, just like the Jews did, who did not speak up when they should have. This is very symbolic. And it's a warning call to all of us. And that's why I stick my neck out and say, I'll probably get shot for reporting this. There'll be a car accident, something will happen. But just let you know.
That's something else that I think is absolutely key. I really want to mention this, and for anybody that might actually be watching this. From the day I started this, I immediately got feedback from everybody I knew, from all walks of life. Be careful. What are you going to do? You can't change the government. You better check your tires. Don't ever go out alone with them. I got all kinds of warnings, and a combination of warnings and apathy. And why this is significant to me is because it doesn't matter whether they were right or not. All right, whether we have to be afraid of the government or not. The point is that people from every walk of life and every age were afraid for me for trying to stand up and say something about my government. And to me, that says that our people are being held hostage. And that is not the sign of a free nation.
I'm Benny LeBeau. They call me Blue Thunder. I'm an Eastern Shoshone from the Wind River Indian Reservation in Wyoming. And I've been working on bringing awarenesses to Mother Earth, inhabitants, to the Black, White, Yellow, and Red Nations about doing prayers and thoughts in ceremonies in circles, huge circles, 200 miles across, 1,200 miles across, known as Native American medicine wheel ceremonies that heals the web of life, known as grandmother spider's web that's spun around the earth. And the sacred sites charge the earth with electrical energy that promotes a beautiful environment with water, gentle winds, food, resources, abundances, by giving gratitude to all of life force creations with the songs of love, or the healing songs known as spirit songs that are done in circle ceremonies known as spirit dances. And we sing to the spirit of the plants, which is energy life force of all creation, whether it's an animal, bird, mammal, snake, or like dolphins, whales, horses, eagles, birds, insects, everything in creation. So they all have songs that we have in their tribal nations, or the red nations, or all nations of the world, or the black, white, and yellow, and red, are all tribal nations and are indigenous to the earth. So prophecies say that we are the ones that will reharmonize the earth with sounds, tones, and vibrations, which comes from our sacred instruments, and drums, and flutes, and gourds, and harps, and crystal bowls, and all the medicine to heal the earth is our thoughts. Our thoughts is the medicine that puts thoughts out that heals all things. So our medicine that we would like to heal a plant with is our thought. And the thought that we put out is what returns and takes place. And then we balance Mother Nature and heal her the best we can. So right now, what we're doing is promoting medicine hall ceremonies, and I've gifted you a tape, or we have gifted you this tape about healing Mother Earth sacred sites, which is the Big Bear Medicine Well, which brings a message about healing the Yellowstone supervolcano on May 8, 2004, and on November 15, 2004, another medicine hall ceremony that was 200 miles across, where the Grand Teton Medicine Hall ceremony, which is known as a magnificent 19 plus 1 equals 20, was 20 sacred sites that are 600 miles away from the powerful sacred site known as the Grand Tetons in Wyoming. 600 miles north is Mount Rainier to the northwest, and then there's 19 other points 600 miles away from the center point known as Grand Tetons peaks in Wyoming, where we live, and we are the stewards to take care of the earth underneath the heart of the rose people. So the Shoshone peoples follow the rose underneath the name of peace, and those who wouldn't follow peace would suffer the thorns of negative thoughts, emotions, or actions that doesn't serve a purpose to make us feel happy. Those are the thorns of false ways of doing things, known as forgetting the natural laws of nature, known as the original instructions. So we've been called upon through dreams and visions and messages through our sacred ancestors who have come to us always, and the chiefs of the past had always communicated with the spiritual leaders of the earth, and they did these ceremonies known as ghost dances, spirit dances, circle ceremonies that were done with prayers and thoughts that we would come back and bring an awareness, and our ancestors would return, and then the knowledges of the information would go back to all of the cultures so we could balance the earth, because those 4 nations and cultures represent the balancing of nature, because the black, white, yellow, and red represent the earth, wind, the fire, and water knowledges, but we're separate from each other now. But now we're coming back together, and those 4 nations will pick up the 4 corners of the earth like a blanket with the black, white, yellow, and red on 4 corners, and it will balance the earth as we go into 2012 and 13.
Can you speak to us of why you are here at this Summit of the Horse here, where they're discussing slaughtering horses? Why are you here at this summit?
The reason that we are here, Christine Soliday and myself, are to bring an awareness about the medicine hall ceremony that's going to be represented in Washington. And because of the horse people in Washington from the Yakima tribe, the horse coalition there, I forget exactly the name of them, to Mother Earth, inhabitants, to the black, white, yellow, and red nations, about doing prayers and thoughts in ceremonies in circles, huge circles, 200 miles across, 1,200 miles across, known as Native American medicine hall ceremonies that heals the web of life, known as grandmother spider's web that's spun around the earth. And the sacred sites charge the earth with electrical energy that promotes a beautiful environment with water, gentle winds, food, resources, abundances, by giving gratitude to all of life force creations with the songs of love, or the healing songs known as spirit songs that are done in circle ceremonies known as spirit dances. And we sing to the spirit.
Does it have anything to do with the horse?
She'll explain that.
Oh, okay.
So in the prophecy, it states that the wild horses will run free in the end times between the 4th world and the 5th world, and that their hooves will reharmonize and retune the web of life. So these horses are so much more important than anyone realizes, as well as the prophecies state that the earth will shed her dress 3 times between now and the new world of 2012, which will look like volcanoes, earthquakes, tornadoes, tsunamis, and that no stone will be left unturned, as is stated in biblical prophecy. And in this time, it is known that a lot of our electronics and our modes of transportation will no longer work, and the horse will become our partner again. So these horses that they believe are unwanted and extra are so needed and so necessary at this time to save them and protect them, for they will be the partners that lead us into the new world. And as an animal communicator who's open to and speaking with all of the different species on the planet, it is my knowing that if everyone in this room could communicate with these animals in the way that I can, that they could no longer consider that as an option, that they are our family members, they are our ancestors, they are the wise ones. Just as the red nations carry the fail-safe key through their sacred songs and dances, the horses also carry the key to reharmonizing the web of life. For the prophecies say that we will put the prayers on their hoofprints, and that they will run free, they will break down the fences and reharmonize all of the world for us, so that we may have the golden age, the New Jerusalem, peace on earth that's prophesied. There was a story told in the red nations about the smallpox that we're all aware came in on the blankets to wipe out the tribes when the white settlers were coming into the areas. And there was a tribe that remembered this wisdom. So they went to one of the horses in their tribe and they asked its permission to put sacred symbols and prayers on it, and asked it to run in a circle around their village for 3 days to protect them from this. And off the horse went in happy compliance to be asked its permission and given a sacred duty to protect the people. And it ran wild in the circle for 3 days, and no one in that village was affected by smallpox, even though everyone in the villages around was. And I think that's a profound story to come up to the surface at this time, that there might be something else that we're not seeing, another purpose for these beings. They're not here to be our food, just as we are not here to be each other's food. It is a time to turn away from cannibalism and know that all animals are related in our one family, and to honor the plants and ask their permission as well, and to give prayers and blessings to the plants to provide enough food for all of us, including the animals. So the goal of bringing Blue Thunder and myself here was a vision through Chief Seattle to come and speak to the nations that are surrounding the area of the medicine wheel that we're going to be creating on spring equinox of 2011. It'll be a 3-day ceremony over the 19th, 20th, and 21st of March of 2011. And to ask them to consider coming forward with their sacred songs and their sacred dances to help us reharmonize the web of life, and that this ceremony would be an example to the entire world of the healing that can take place through these ceremonies, and would further a larger ceremony that we've been given a vision to do, which is a 4,000-mile medicine wheel ceremony to take place on fall equinox of 2011, the center point being Costa Rica, and extending all the way north up into Ontario, Canada, into the Hopi lands, down into Peru, and that this ceremony would connect the Americas back into one. Prophecies state that the Americas are the New Jerusalem. This is where the peace on earth will start and spread to the rest of the world. So it is our note that thousands of people will come and gather on these points and sing and dance and pray and intend with us in March, and that these horses may be a part of that ceremony and that they be honored as well. So we come to give them a voice. We come not to fight, not to point fingers of blame or say that anyone is wrong or right, but to ask them to consider a new perspective, the spiritual perspective, the sacred perspective that's been forgotten. And so in that is our reason for being here at the Horse Summit and our reason for being in existence. So.
Unfortunately, we must close. Stay tuned for part 2 of atrocities the U.S. government is inflicting on wildlife with your tax dollars and what you can do about it. Thanks for watching Meet America.